Hello, everyone. It's so quiet now. Unnaturally quiet. The kind of stillness that settles in only after years of commotion, chaos, and joyful noise have faded, leaving their echoes etched into the walls. Lori's out on a grocery run. At least, that's what she said. But knowing her, she'll probably come back with more than just food. Maybe something to spruce up the house, or even a small surprise for me. That's just how she is, thoughtful in ways that catch me off guard. We've been married for 24 years now, and in a month, we'll celebrate 25. A quarter of a century together. That milestone hits me harder than I thought it would. It feels like only yesterday that I was nervously carrying around an engagement ring in my pocket, rehearsing how to propose without making a total fool of myself. And here we are, two grown kids out of the house, and this place suddenly feels way too big. Alan and Sandra, our kids, are both in college now. Alan's wrapping up his senior year, and Sandra's just getting into her sophomore year. It's strange not having them around anymore. The house used to be alive with noise. Alan blasting his music upstairs, Sandra locked in debates with Lori over curfew, and the steady stream of their friends coming and going. Now, it's just me and Lori. And when she's out like this, it's only me. I figured it was time to stop lazing around and get moving. Lori would tease me if she saw me still in bed this late in the morning, joking that I was turning into some kind of retiree. I reached for the bottle of vitamins on my nightstand, twisted the cap, and tried to tip one into my hand. Instead, the pill ricocheted off the table, bounced onto the floor, and, naturally, rolled right under the bed. With a groan, I muttered a few choice words under my breath and knelt down to fish it out. Underneath, it was darker than I expected, with a faint, dusty smell I hadn't noticed before. I groped around, my fingers brushing against stray lint and an old sock, probably one of Alan's that got left behind when he packed up for college. Then my hand closed on something else, something thin, crinkly, and completely out of place. I pulled it out, stared at it for a second, and felt my stomach drop. It was a condom wrapper. For a long moment, I just sat there on the floor, holding the thing like it was some kind of alien artifact. My first reaction was confusion. Who the hell? No one's been here. No guests. No parties. It's just been me and Lori in this house for months. Then, another thought crept in, one that made my chest tighten painfully. I had a vasectomy after Sandra was born. It was a mutual decision. 2 kids were enough, and we agreed on it without hesitation. So why the hell was there a condom wrapper under our bed? And that's when the thought struck me, the one I didn't want to believe but couldn't shake. Could Lori be cheating on me? Anger flared up, hot and sharp, but I forced it down. Charging at Lori with this flimsy piece of evidence wouldn't do any good. She'd deny it, or worse, twist it around and make me the bad guy. No, I needed more than just a plastic wrapper before confronting her. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The house felt suffocating, every room suddenly a suspect in this drama. I needed to clear my head, and I knew exactly who I could turn to. Davy Jones? Not the pirate guy from the movies, but the real Davy Jones. An old Navy buddy and now a private investigator, Davy had earned his nickname years ago, and it stuck even after he left the service. If anyone could help me figure out what was going on, it was him. When I walked into his office, Davy was lounging in his chair, his feet up on the desk, sipping coffee from a mug with a chip on the rim. He glanced up, grinned, and stood to shake my hand. "Well, if it isn't Andrew Hunter," he said with a smirk, motioning for me to take a seat. "What brings you here today?" I hesitated, the words stuck in my throat, but eventually, I told him everything. The wrapper, my doubts, the gnawing fear that wouldn't let me go. Davy listened quietly, his face serious, nodding every so often but letting me get it all out. When I finally finished, he leaned back, rubbing the stubble on his chin. "All right, Andrew," he said, "I'll help you. Give me a week, and I'll see what I can dig up. But before we go down this road, you need to think about something. If this turns out to be what you suspect, you have to be ready for the fallout. Talk to a lawyer. Figure out what this might mean for you financially and otherwise." The thought made my stomach churn, but I knew he was right. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll do that." Davy clapped a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We'll get to the bottom of this, man. I promise." A couple of hours later, I found myself in the office of Marcus Reed, the best divorce lawyer in town. The man had a reputation for being a shark, and the way his sharp eyes studied me as I explained my situation made it clear why. When I finished, he jotted down a few notes on his legal pad, then looked up. Andrew, if this goes the way you think, you're looking at losing half, assets, savings, even the house. California's a community property state. After all, hearing it said out loud sent a cold chill through me, but I nodded, knowing he was just doing his job. A clean 50-50 split. Half of everything I'd spent my life working for. Everything Lori and I had built together. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. But no matter how much it hurt, one thing was clear. I could lose my money, the house, even half my life, but I wasn't going to stay married to a cheater. Marcus seemed to read my thoughts, leaning forward in his chair, his voice dropping a notch. If you're serious about this, Andrew, here's my advice. Keep your head down and act like everything's normal. Don't give her a reason to think you're on to her. If she gets suspicious, she'll lawyer up, and things will get a lot messy, eh? I nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. I'll do my best, I replied, though the weight of his warning pressed heavily on me. By the time I left his office, I was drained, mentally, emotionally, but more determined than ever. When I got home, Lori was in the kitchen, slicing vegetables for dinner. She glanced up as I walked in and gave me a smile, her expression warm and familiar, like nothing was out of the ordinary. The sight of her like that made my chest tighten, but I forced myself to return the smile. I've got a business trip tomorrow, I said, leaning against the counter casually. I'll be out for the week. That night, as we climbed into bed, Lori slid closer to me, her hand brushing against my arm. Her touch was warm, and her intentions were clear as she murmured softly, inviting me into a moment we'd shared countless times before. But I couldn't. I'm tired, I said flatly, my voice quiet and distant. She paused, then sighed and turned away, her back facing me as she pulled the covers tighter around her. I stared up at the ceiling in the dark, my thoughts spinning wildly. Was I making a mistake? What if the condom wrapper wasn't hers? Alan had stayed in our room for a couple of nights before heading back to college while his room was being painted. Could it have been his? Was I jumping to conclusions? But even as I clung to these excuses, the doubt wouldn't let go. What if this was exactly what it seemed? What if Lori really was cheating? The questions gnawed at me, tearing at whatever resolve I had left. The next morning, I woke early, packed a small bag, and slipped out of the house. Lori barely stirred, her soft, steady breathing filling the room as I quietly closed the door behind me. The drive out of town was uneventful, the bustling city streets gradually giving way to quiet, open roads. The motel I checked into was as nondescript as I'd expected. Cheap, clean enough, and anonymous. It was exactly what I needed. I dropped my bag on the bed and sat down, staring blankly at the faded wallpaper. The hours dragged by, each minute feeling heavier than the last, until my phone buzzed. It was Davy. Andrew, he said, his voice calm but with a sharp undertone. Lori just left the house. She's checked into a motel. My heart raced. Which one? He hesitated for a moment before answering. The same motel where you're staying. I sat frozen, the weight of his words settling over me like a lead blanket. My heart pounded as silence filled the room, interrupted only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. When Davy called again, his voice was low and urgent. She's in the room next to yours, man. Listen to me. Don't confront her. Not here, not now. Just leave the room and cool off. You don't want to make a scene. But I couldn't. No, Davy, I said, my voice strained with emotion. I need to know. I need to hear it for myself. Davy sighed heavily, the frustration clear in his voice. Fine, but don't do anything stupid. Promise me, Andrew. I muttered something close to an agreement and hung up, the phone trembling in my hand. The minutes dragged on, every second feeling like an eternity, until finally, muffled voices seeped through the thin walls. At first, I couldn't make out the words, just the sound of Lori's voice mingling with a man's, deep and unfamiliar. Then the words became clearer, and what I heard made my stomach churn. I don't know why you're still with him, the man said, his voice laced with disdain. The guy's old, washed up. He can't satisfy you, can he? No, he can't, Lori's voice replied, breathless and sharp. You're the best I've had in a long time. He's just so old now. The man laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. Then why stay with him? Her answer came without hesitation, her tone matter of fact. I need him to keep the bills paid. Now shut up and get back to what you're good at. The words were like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I sat there, frozen on the edge of the bed, my fists clenched and my breath heavy. The laughter from the next room was like acid, eating away at whatever was left of my composure. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, my hands balled into fists, ready to burst into the next room and end this nightmare. But before I could move, the door to my room opened and Davy walked in, his expression grim. He grabbed my arm, holding me back with surprising strength. Don't, he said sharply, his voice firm and commanding. Not like this. Let me go, I hissed, struggling against his grip, but he didn't budge. Listen to me, Andrew. They've got the window open. I've got my camera rolling. Everything is being recorded. You'll have all the evidence you need. If you storm in there now, you're the one who's going to get arrested, and that'll screw you over in the divorce. His words were a lifeline of reason in the storm of rage and pain swirling inside me. I glared at him, my breath ragged, my body trembling with fury. I don't care about the divorce, I growled. I just want to make them pay. Davy stepped closer, his grip firm and unyielding. You will, Andrew, he said with a steady voice, but not like this. Think for a second. If you lose it now, you lose everything. For a moment, I fought against him, my anger boiling just beneath the surface, ready to spill over. But Davy was stronger, and his words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Slowly, the fire inside me began to fizzle, replaced by a crushing wave of grief. I sank back onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. I felt hollow, broken, humiliated, and utterly powerless. The woman I'd loved and trusted for over 2 decades was in the next room, ripping apart everything we'd built together as if it meant nothing. After a long silence, I pushed myself upright, my jaw set and my hands trembling with restrained fury. I'll have my revenge, I said quietly, each word dripping with determination. She might take half of everything, but I'll destroy her, just like she destroyed my trust and our marriage. After Davy left, I sat alone in the dim motel room, my head spinning. The weight of everything that had just unfolded felt suffocating. My body was heavy, as though I was carrying the weight of 1,000 bricks. The plan was clear. Stay low for 3 days while Davy kept tabs on Lori. That was the deal. But sitting there, knowing what she was doing, was pure torture. By the time Davy called later that night, I was pacing the room, my hands clenching and unclenching as her words replayed over and over in my mind. She and the guy left the motel, Davy said calmly, though there was an edge of urgency in his tone. I've got a positive ID on him. His name's Aaron Smith. He's her co-worker. The name hit me like a blow, though it meant nothing to me. Still, the fact that she was with someone from her office cut deeper than I'd expected. All those late nights she'd said were spent working suddenly had a new, bitter meaning. Davy continued, his tone measured. I'll keep following her. For now, just stay put, like we agreed. You don't want to move too soon before we've got all the proof we need. I muttered a barely audible response before hanging up, my hand shaking as I put the phone down. The hours that followed dragged on, every tick of the clock reminding me of what she was doing and who she was doing it with. The next day, Davy called again. His updates were clipped, clinical, each word cutting into me like a knife. She's been spending time at Aaron's place. Same routine, meeting after work, staying late. I've got enough footage to make a case. I didn't say anything, gripping the phone tightly as I listened. Then he added, she's been sleeping with him every day, Andrew, at his place before heading back home. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I forced myself to stay silent, letting him finish. Later that day, I met with both Davy and Marcus in Marcus's office. The air was heavy, the blinds drawn, the faint scent of leather and coffee lingering in the room. Marcus leaned back in his chair, His fingers steepled as he spoke. "We stick to the plan," he said firmly, his voice sharp with authority. "Andrew, you go home and keep things normal. Don't let her suspect anything. The evidence we've got is solid, but the longer you keep your cool, the stronger your case becomes." Davy nodded from where he stood near the window, his arms crossed. "Exactly. You've got to act like everything's fine. No confrontations, no slip-ups. Let her think she's in the clear while we keep gathering intel. If she changes her routine or tries something new, I'll catch it." I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening with every word. "I understand," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "I'll handle it." Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. "Good. And remember this. If you lose your temper, you lose your leverage. Keep that in mind every second you're around her." I nodded, exhaling deeply as we reviewed the details one last time before I left. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on me, but I was determined to see it through. When I got home, Lori was in the kitchen, her face lighting up as I walked through the door. "You're back," she said brightly, moving toward me as if to hug me. I stepped back quickly, raising a hand. "Wait," I said, trying to sound casual. "I think I might have been exposed to COVID-19. Someone at work tested positive, and I'm not feeling great. I don't want to risk passing it to you." Her face shifted instantly to concern. "Oh no. Are you okay? Do you have symptoms?" "Just a sore throat." I lied smoothly, keeping my tone calm. "But I think it's best if I stay in the guest room for a few days, just to be safe." She nodded, her concern seeming genuine. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything, tea, soup, whatever. I'll take care of you." I forced a small smile. "Thanks. I'll manage." She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you think we should cancel the anniversary party? It's only a few weeks away." I shook my head quickly. "No, no need for that. I'll be fine in a few days. While I'm isolating, I'll use the time to plan something nice for the party." Her expression softened, and she smiled warmly. "That's sweet of you." I nodded again, keeping my face neutral, but inside, I was anything but calm. Later that evening, my phone buzzed in the guest room. I grabbed it, already knowing it was Davy. "She left the office during lunch," he said without preamble. "She's at Aaron's house again. Same routine." My jaw clenched, but I didn't interrupt, letting him continue. "I've sent you the videos and pictures," he added. "You should have them in your inbox now." I opened the email, my stomach twisting as I scrolled through the images. Undeniable proof of her betrayal. Lori walking into Aaron's house. The two of them wrapped up in ways I didn't want to imagine. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. My hand tightened around the phone, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. Finally, I broke the silence. "If I weren't her husband," I said coldly, my voice detached, "I might have enjoyed these videos. But now? She just makes me sick." There was a pause on Davy's end before he replied, his tone steady but cautious. "I know this isn't easy, Andrew," Davy said, his voice calm but firm, "but it's only a matter of time now." 7 days of isolation felt like an eternity. The minutes crawled, each one heavier than the last, but I knew I had to stick to the plan. Lori was oblivious, caught up in her own little world, too distracted to suspect anything. When the time came for me to end my isolation, I forced myself to rejoin her, acting like everything was perfectly normal. She was eager, of course, probably hoping things would slide back into the comfortable rhythm we'd once had. But when she tried to pull me close, I gently pulled away. "I'm still feeling a bit weak," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the mess swirling inside me. "I don't think I'm up for anything tonight." Her brow furrowed, her concern appearing genuine. "You've been sick, Andrew. You should take it easy." "I will," I replied, maintaining my calm exterior. "I'm just not feeling great yet." The next day, I went to the clinic to get a full STD panel done. I needed to be certain, no matter how much it scared me. The clinic staff were quick and professional, and I tried to push away the endless what-ifs gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. I had to know. When I got home, I began sending out invitations for the anniversary party. Family, friends, everyone we knew. The celebration was happening, and I was going to make sure it went off without a hitch. That afternoon, the phone rang. It was the kids, calling to confirm they'd be there. Hearing their voices gave me a brief flicker of warmth, but it was quickly smothered by the dark cloud that loomed over everything. Later, Lori approached me, her expression soft and loving. "I love you, Andrew," she said sincerely, her voice gentle. "I'm so happy to have you as my husband." I gave her a small, empty smile, the mask firmly in place. "I know you are, honey." A week later, the day of the anniversary party finally arrived. The house was bustling with guests, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Friends and family congratulated us, marveling at our 25 years together. Lori was radiant, as she always was in front of an audience. Her bright, practiced smile didn't waver for a moment. She had, of course, invited people from her office. Aaron was there too, his wife by his side. I couldn't help but notice the subtle glances he and Lori exchanged. Lori stayed close to me, almost glued to my side, while Aaron pretended to engage in idle conversation nearby. I didn't invite anyone from my office. Lori had found it strange, but I had a quick explanation ready. "They're all tied up in an important meeting," I said smoothly. It wasn't a complete lie, just a little spin on the truth. But I didn't need anyone from work there, not while this charade played out. Lori's parents arrived shortly after, showering us with congratulations and kind words. I smiled politely, thanking them, but inside, I was anything but grateful. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know what their daughter had done. Lori kept up the act flawlessly, her arm looped through mine as she greeted everyone with her usual warmth and enthusiasm. She was determined to make everything seem picture perfect. Meanwhile, I could barely keep my composure, counting down the minutes until the inevitable. The evening was in full swing. Laughter, drinks, conversations flowing effortlessly. It was all so perfect, almost too perfect. But I reminded myself this was the calm before the storm. Then Davy and Marcus arrived. I'd been waiting for this moment. Every detail had been planned meticulously, and now it was time to execute. I asked Lori to let go of my hand. Her touch was a constant reminder of the betrayal I'd endured. She obliged without question, smiling as she turned her attention back to the guests. She had no idea what was coming. I walked to the large screen we'd set up for the occasion, stepping into the spotlight as the lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent, their attention now focused on me. With the microphone in hand, I began. "I'm grateful to everyone who came tonight," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "It means a lot to me and to Lori that you're all here to celebrate this milestone with us." The guests murmured their agreement, smiling warmly. "For the past 24 years and 6 months, I've been married to Lori," I continued, my words deliberate. Lori, standing nearby, interrupted softly. "No, it's 25 years." I gave her a small, knowing smile and replied, "I'll explain, honey." Turning to Davy, I nodded. "Davy, would you please present the gift to my wife?" Davy stepped forward, holding a large, carefully wrapped frame. Lori smiled brightly, standing beside her parents as her father helped unwrap the gift. She was still blissfully unaware of what was about to happen. The room tensed as the wrapping came off, revealing the image inside. Lori's smile faltered, then vanished entirely, replaced by shock. It was a photo, her and Aaron, tangled together in bed. Her scream pierced the room, shattering the tension. Her father's face turned red with anger. "Andrew, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice shaking with fury. "This is a sick joke." I turned to him, my own anger simmering beneath the surface but my voice calm. "It's not a joke," I said evenly. "This image is just a still frame. A clearer view of the video I'm about to play." The image was just the opening act. I'd prepared for what came next. Davy moved to the controls, and with a few clicks, the video began playing on the giant screen. Lori and Aaron, in the act, the explicit betrayal laid bare for everyone to see. Then came the words that had haunted me since I first heard them. "I'm keeping him just to keep the bills rolling." The room fell into an oppressive silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on everyone present. I felt dozens of eyes on me, their gazes heavy with shock. pity, or judgment. But I didn't falter. I had already felt the sting of this betrayal. It couldn't hurt me any more than it already had. Breaking the tension, a man in a black suit entered the room. His calm demeanor only made the moment feel more surreal. He moved with purpose, walking straight toward Lori without sparing her a glance. Her face was frozen in shock, her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He handed her a manila envelope, his tone professional but sharp. "Mrs. Hunter, you have been served." Lori instinctively took the envelope, her hand trembling. Her eyes darted between the man and me, panic and confusion written all over her face. She opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, but no sound escaped. The man didn't linger. He turned and walked toward Aaron, who stood stiffly, his expression shifting between guilt and disbelief. The man handed him another envelope. "Mr. Smith, you have been served," he said, his voice steady. Aaron's face drained of color as he accepted the envelope. He glanced at Lori, his eyes wide with fear, but she was too stunned to meet his gaze. The man wasn't done. He turned and walked toward Mr. Thompson, the CEO of Lori's company, who had been standing near the back of the room. As he approached, the room seemed to shrink, the sound of his footsteps echoing. "Mr. Thompson," the man said, handing over yet another envelope, "you have been served." The CEO frowned as he took the envelope, his confusion quickly morphing into anger. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice unsteady. But the man didn't answer. He turned and exited the room as swiftly as he had entered, leaving chaos in his wake. I stepped forward, locking eyes with Mr. Thompson. My voice was calm, but every word was deliberate and cutting. "That is a lawsuit," I said, "for failing to enforce your company's morality code. Your employees were using company time to engage in immoral behavior, and you allowed it to happen." Thompson's face twisted, his confusion mingling with fury, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. My attention shifted to Aaron, the man who had shattered my marriage. "Mr. Smith," I said, my voice hardening, "you've been served for alienation of affection. You destroyed my marriage. You betrayed me in every sense of the word." The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. But then I turned to Lori, the person who had hurt me the most. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay composed. "And Lori," I said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion, "you've been served for divorce." Her eyes widened, her lips quivering as if she might cry. But I wasn't finished. She had to understand the depth of what she had done. "You heard me say earlier that we've been married for 24 years and 6 months, I began. "That's true. But the truth is, our marriage died the day you decided to sleep with him." The words tasted bitter, but they were the truth, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. "From the evidence we've gathered, we know this affair started 6 months ago. You made your choice back then, Lori, and now I'm making mine." Her expression flickered, guilt, anger, despair, but I didn't care. She had destroyed everything we had built together. "I don't care why you did it," I said, my voice cold and final. "I don't need to know. Just pack your things and get out of my house." For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. It was over. The days that followed were far from peaceful. Lori's parents wouldn't stop calling, showing up at my house, pleading with me to forgive her. "Andrew, you don't understand," her mother insisted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Lori's going through something. She needs help. You've been together for so long. You can work through this." Her father, usually reserved, tried a more forceful approach. "You can't just throw away 24 years, Andrew. Think about the family. Think about everything you've built together." But I didn't waver. Their words meant nothing to me. Lori had made her choices, and I'd made mine. She wasn't done trying, though. At the divorce hearing, she tried to pull a desperate excuse out of thin air. "Ben, please," she said, tears streaming down her face, her voice cracking. "I've been going through a lot. I have a hormone imbalance. I just needed more intimacy. You weren't able to give me that, and that's why I did what I did." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. After all of this was her excuse? Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Ms. Hunter," he said, his voice sharp, There is no record of you ever discussing this issue with my client. And as far as we can see, there are no medical records or doctor's notes to support your claim." Lori flinched at his words, her gaze dropping to the table. The judge, who had been silent until now, leaned forward, his expression stern. The judge leaned forward, his expression stern but composed. "Ms. Hunter," he began, his tone measured yet sharp, "if there was truly a medical issue affecting your marriage, why didn't you inform your husband? Why didn't you seek a solution together, as a couple?" Lori's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Her frustration was evident, her silence damning. The judge didn't wait for a response. "The court sees no substantial proof to support your claim. Communication is the cornerstone of a marriage, and this court finds no grounds for reconciliation." The weight of his words settled over the room like a heavy fog. Though I had expected this outcome, hearing it aloud was a bittersweet conclusion. It was the end of a chapter that I once thought would last forever. After 7 grueling months of legal battles and emotional turmoil, the divorce was finalized. But the scars it left behind didn't fade easily. The fallout rippled outward, affecting everyone in its path. Alan and Sandra, my kids, were caught in the crossfire of it all. They didn't take sides, but their silence spoke volumes. They were angry at Lori for what she had done, but they were also upset with me for how I had exposed her so publicly. I understood their pain. I had torn apart the life they knew, and even if I believed it was justified, I knew it had hurt them deeply. They stopped communicating with both of us. Their absence left a hole in my heart that nothing could fill, but I gave them the space they needed to heal. I didn't push, didn't try to reach out too much. I knew they needed time. Financially, the divorce was devastating. My assets were halved, split right down the middle. Everything I had worked for over the years felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But as painful as it was, I didn't regret it. Lori may have taken her share, but she didn't take my dignity or self-respect. Those were mine, and I intended to keep them. Aaron didn't fare much better. He was embroiled in his own messy divorce, with Marcus representing his wife. I knew Aaron wasn't coming out of it unscathed. He had as much to lose as I did, if not more. He had played a role in destroying my marriage, and now his was crumbling around him. As for the CEO, Mr. Thompson, he wanted to bury the entire mess. The scandal was bad for business, and his priorities were clear. It wasn't long before I got a call from him, asking for a discreet meeting. The offer was simple: $1 million to drop the lawsuit. They wanted silence, closure, and I was the only one who could provide it. By then, I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. The divorce was behind me, and I had made peace with my decision. If taking the money meant ending the chaos and giving myself a fresh start, I was willing to accept it. I withdrew the case. The money became a symbol, not of greed, but of survival. It was the foundation for rebuilding my life. 3 years later, I'm sitting on the porch of my small farmhouse, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky is a masterpiece of orange and pink, the kind of view that only the countryside can offer. The air is crisp and clean, and the stillness of this place is a balm to my soul. I'm not alone out here. Max and Duke, my 2 German shepherds, are always nearby. They're more than just pets. They're my companions, my protectors. Their watchful eyes seem to promise that no harm will come my way again. The farm itself is modest, nothing fancy, but it's mine. I've spent the past year learning the ropes, feeding the chickens, mending fences, planting crops, and finding joy in the simple, repetitive tasks that fill my days. Life moves slower here, and for the first time in years, I'm not in a rush. To my surprise, Alan and Sandra have started visiting. It's still awkward at times, and the wounds from the past haven't fully healed, but I can see progress. With every visit, the walls between us come down just a little more. We talk about the farm, their lives, and lighter things that don't feel as heavy as they once did. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just here for them when they need me. As for Lori, I've heard she's living with her parents now, undergoing therapy to work through everything that happened. I don't wish her harm. In fact, I feel a faint sense of empathy for her. She's facing her own demons, and while her actions destroyed our marriage, I've let go of the anger and bitterness. This farm, this life, has taught me that holding on to rage only chains you to the past. And I'm not living in the past anymore. I've moved on. Each morning, I wake up to the sound of birds, the rustle of the wind through the trees, and the playful barks of my dogs as they chase after something unseen. It's not the life I imagined for myself, but it's the life I've built, and for the first time in years, I can honestly say I'm happy. I have everything I need, right here. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel. Bye.